Hey, it's Akanksha over here. I run a cold email outbound agency, and in this week's update video, I'm going to be talking about really a realization that kind of materialized. And that might sound very fancy, but pretty much an assumption or a thought that I used to have was, spending hours on end trying to enrich a CSV lead list to be able to create the most custom copy that's relevant is not the most effective way of getting the bottom line result, which is sales meetings. And really, this week has proven that assumption to be true. What I mean by that is like a lot of people, and just before I even go through what a lot of people do, or what I tend to notice right now, I'm sending around 5,000 emails per day for myself, for my clients. Combined, we were probably close to like 15 to 20,000 per day. And the 5,000 that I send per day, on an average, I'm booking one call for every 2,000 sends. Now, that is including a second or a third email in a sequence. So, roughly, we're booking around 2 to 3 calls every single day. And so, just from my observations, what I've noticed is, especially on social media, where people post ridiculous stats where they get reply rates of like 10-15%, and the positive reply rates like 50-60-70%. But if you actually look at that campaign and how many leads were put in, it's like 100-200 leads. And so sure, out of the 200 leads, if 10% actually replied, yeah, okay, you got 20 responses, and then out of those 20, maybe 10 of them were positive. In order to actually get those 10 positive responses and actually get 200 leads to fit into that CSV, it takes hours on end to be able to enrich all those angles. It might take 6, 8, 10 hours to be able to scrape enough data to find that one angle. And what I've noticed is, especially when you launch a campaign, and typically for most offers where it's not necessarily like a lead generation offer, where it's not something new, something sexy, something that the market is going to naturally want to gravitate towards when they hear it. It's a capture offer. It's capturing demand. And so when an offer is like that, something like Legion, which is demand capture, the name of the game is just how quickly can you send enough volume to be able to capture enough demand to be able to get enough sales calls, right? Where actually the numbers make sense. And so if you need to be launching a campaign, every single day, plus the fact that once you launch a campaign and that first email has gone through, typically the second and third email, or if you even have even more than that, they're not going to be producing as good results as your first email. So it's probably in your best interest to, ideally, in an ideal world, launch a first email every single day. And in order to do that, if you're like enriching lists and trying to find the best customizations, you're not going to find enough leads to be able to hit the exact enrichment that you want. And B, even if you were, it would take so many hours on end. You might be list building for 6-8 hours a day, which just isn't practical if you're running an agency, or even if you are a business owner and you are trying to do cold email for yourself. Unless you've got no calls in your calendar, it might make sense to then, sure, spend that much time on marketing. But still, I don't know, even then you could probably cold call or find other forms of marketing to be able to get calls quicker. So it hasn't really made sense at all. Because, like, yeah, coming back to the example, 200 leads, which take like 5, 6, 7 hours to be able to get into a sequencer, a campaign. Sure, 20 of them respond, 10 of them are positive. I mean, you could launch a much bigger campaign for the 6 hours. You could probably launch like 6 campaigns, like, reach out to like 15 to 20,000 leads. Even if 1% reply back, that's 150 to 200 responses. Sure, let's say like 150. And then even out of that 150, even if 10% are positive, that's 15 positive replies, which is more than the 10. So from a numbers standpoint, it just makes a lot more sense to kind of use the volume approach. And so that's what we've been doing. We kind of even set a rule now where whenever we're going to launch a campaign every day, because the name of the game is launching one campaign every day, you have 30 minutes to actually get the campaign launched. And that's from lead list, copy, everything combined. That way we're spending more majority of the day on the revenue generating stuff as opposed to actually creating this perfect campaign. Because a lot of times the incremental improvements that you'll see in reply rate and positive reply rate are not worth it when it kind of compares to how much time you actually need to put in to make that incremental improvement even happen, how much enrichment that even if you're not manually doing and you have like a Firecrawl, a parallel AI, or you have Claude Code or Codex running those enrichments and scraping data, it's still just burning credits and taking so much time. So that's the real assumption that I've got to. And it also kind of comes to my cutting rule. So knowing that usually typically with a demand capture offer where nothing really special, and especially if you have a larger tab, it's in your best interest to really, after the first email, cut a campaign if the numbers aren't where you want it to be. So let's say if you have a sample lead list of 5,000 leads in a campaign, and you have enough inboxes to be able to hit that 5,000 over, let's say, 1 to 3 days. By the time you get to that 3 day point, so people who received email one, it's now been 48 hours. People who received email one on day two, it's been 24 hours. And even people who received email one on day three, it's like been a couple hours. You have enough time. You've given it because it's hit at least 2,000 leads. You want to make assumptions or calculations or decisions after 2,000 leads. So you reach 5,000 people. You've given enough time. If the reply rate is below 1%, that's reply rate excluding out of offers, and the positive reply rate is like below 5 to 10%. Just cut it. Like there's no point of running email 2 and 3, which would burn another 5-10 days with those inboxes, not producing any great results. You're better off just cut the campaign, take those inboxes, and then actually spin up a new campaign. And that's what's constantly allowed the continuous stream of book calls every single day. So that's a strategy that I've been using, and that's really what I'm focusing on. Really moving into the next 2 weeks, we're going to be doubling this volume from 5 to 10,000. So all else kind of remaining the same, bottom of funnel, downstream, we should be getting closer to the 4-5 book calls for ourselves every single day. So we'll keep you posted on what that looks like, and yeah, take care.